Greetings all, Ferrari-Man 601 here. On the 8th of January, VRC released their absolutely glorious McLaren MP4 22 in point .1 beta for Assetto Corsa. Point .1 beta, remember that as we're looking at this car. Available to VRC donors for the very, very reasonable sum of $2.50 US, this car is just something special. Truly something special. Point .1 beta, this car is still in the very beginnings of its gestation in terms of development, but look at it. First of all, just look at it for a second as it gracefully spins around here in showroom view. Look at that modeling, look at those textures, look at those reflections. Look at those tires, the wheels, everything. It's been rendered in such fine detail, and to see this level of workmanship at such an early stage of development is pretty much unheard of. Pretty much. There are so many very good modders and modding teams out there in sim racing these days. We're really starting to approach what I think is a golden era of sim racing. Everything is just coming out of the woodwork, basically, and the quality just keeps increasing. And the fact that these guys, they ask us either a small donation or they just give it to us outright for free, just absolutely wonderful stuff, and I can't thank these guys enough for the opportunity to do these reviews and just simply to enjoy driving these cars, because I don't have this kind of talent, and the people who do could certainly make a lot of money as software developers in the commercial sector, but they choose to invest their time like this for us passionate sim racers out there. So just thank you all so much for this, first of all. But in any regard, the MP4 22, it's over on VRC. Definitely take a look. There will be a link in the description of this video. The MP4 22 in the real world, though, we've got to talk about that a little bit. Following up on their first winless season in a decade in 2006, McLaren wanted to come back with a vengeance and reclaim some of their glory, basically, from their championship-winning years gone by. The MP4 22 rose to that challenge 100%. In 2007, it was all changed for McLaren. They had a completely new driver lineup. Kimi Raikkonen had gone off to Ferrari. Juan Pablo Montoya had departed for the United States, and Pedro de la Rosa decided that he was going to hang up his helmet. So, incoming world champion from Renault, Fernando Alonso, off the back of his 2005 and 2006 wins, and newcomer Lewis Hamilton, having graduated to Formula One from GP2, having been a McLaren protege for most of his life, got the opportunity to get in the cockpit of the MP4 22 and fight for the Constructors' Championship for McLaren Mercedes. That Constructors' Championship, however, we can't really talk about the 2007 season without talking about the immense level of controversy that was there at the time and, to a large extent, still is there among Formula One fans. About midway through the championship, it came to light that McLaren was the illegal recipient of some very sensitive Ferrari technical data. This technical data apparently had a lot to do with the design and development of the F2007. Obviously, that was Ferrari's car, driven by Kimi Raikkonen and Felipe Massa. That design data wasn't so much copied by McLaren in the MP4 22, rather it was superseded. The 422 was designed from the word go to be superior to the F2007 specifically. Renault were always going to be on their back foot. Yes, they were back-to-back defending Constructors' champions, but Fernando Alonso, once he left the team, they really were not going to maintain their momentum. They had Fisichella and Kovalainen, and the Renault engine was not regarded to be the best engine on the grid, so McLaren basically thought, hey, we've got the reigning world champion, we've got one of the best engines on the grid, and of course we have Pat Fry as our chief designer and Ron Dennis as our team principal. We have a pretty much unbeatable combination, and now we've got Ferrari technical data. Let's go out and absolutely dominate this championship. And that's what they tried to do. Between Alonso and Hamilton, the MP4 22 took 8 race victories and 8 pole positions. It also set 5 fastest laps, and when you go through the points tally, through all of the races, all of the results, McLaren definitely would have won the 2007 Constructors' Championship had the conclusion of the so-called Spygate saga not been a $100 million fine and a disqualification from the Constructors' Championship. The drivers, however, were spared any formal reprimand, as Hamilton and Alonso got to keep their World Championship points scored, and Lewis Hamilton so famously and so heart-wrenchingly barely lost just barely lost the 2007 Drivers' Championship in his debut season. Honestly, it was all his own fault. He threw it off the road entering the pits in China. He was on old intermediate tires. He should have known better. He got a little bit too overexcited, and there went the World Championship to Kimi Räikkönen's way. But regardless, the MP422 still an absolute tour de force when it comes to the design of a Grand Prix car. Absolutely wonderful as a technical study, and whether it has any Ferrari DNA or not, I think is a little irrelevant, just because of the piece that it is, and certainly its competition history. Whether or not it has any homage to Ferrari owed is just something else. We had Fernando Alonso there in his first and to that point only season at McLaren. He left kind of in a huff at the end of '07 to go back to Renault, where he managed to win a couple races in 2008, amazingly enough, in that bear of a car. And then, of course, Hamilton, the following year in 2008, won his first Drivers' Championship in this car's immediate successor, the MP423. Technical specs on the car, they are a little bit murky, simply because it's the nature of the business of Formula One, but we have a Mercedes-Benz FO108T V8 engine in the back. Don't be confused by the T, that's just a designation in the series of engine. It is a normally aspirated 2.4-liter V8, as mandated then by the regulations. It revved to 19,000 RPM, which was the homologation rev limit introduced in 2008. About 750 horsepower, I would say. This was the second year in Formula One for the V8 engine, so the engines had all been homologated by this time, and this was the real beginning of the cost-cutting measures that the FIA have induced in a rather draconian manner, I must say, and we're still seeing it in Formula One all the way in 2017. This really needs to stop right now, Bernie. But in any regard, that's the engine. The gearbox, we've got 7 forward speeds plus reverse, semi-automatic paddle shift. 2007 also notable in the gearbox department for being the first year where the so-called seamless shift technology became ubiquitous up and down the grid. Williams in 2006, they trialed the seamless shift gearbox in their car, and it was pretty reliable for the most part, so everybody copied it, of course, by 2007. That Williams gearbox in '06 was so good that Toyota, who was the engine supplier for Williams in 2007, Toyota, as part of their engine supply agreement, asked Williams to supply them with gearboxes. So a big factory outfit asking a privateer team for a gearbox. Interesting. But everybody copied that technology, and of course here it is on the McLaren. That seamless shift means that although there is a gap in drive as mandated by the regulations on every gear change, that gap in drive has no lower limit. So it can be basically an instantaneous cessation of torque and then reapplication of torque in the next gear from the engine. So you're upshifting in this box about 12 milliseconds, well faster than you can blink your eye. You barely notice the gear change when you're out on track. You just hear the engine changing revs. Now, for the mod itself. Just look at it. I'm not going to talk much. Just look at it. Look at it real nice and slow. Yeah. You getting that front wing? Yeah. Full frontal. Full frontal indeed. Of course, what you're seeing here is the product of years of research and development by McLaren and Formula One in general. This was basically the maturity of the regulations that had existed in various forms from about 1995. The overall plan of the cars aerodynamically and in terms of overall dimensions for the most part didn't change that much from 1995 all the way up to 2008. So these cars, this particular design philosophy was very mature by this point, and you could really see how the engineers were just beginning to find the absolute zenith of exploitation of topside aero. Look at all of these aerodynamic flow modifiers, the flick-ups, the turning vanes, the canard wings here in the center section of the front end of the car. Just absolutely ridiculous exploitation of the very specific bodywork regulations in terms of where you can and cannot have appendages sticking out of the car. The lower section of the car here, you've got 2 sets of barge boards. You've got black ones toward the front end there, just underneath the where the nose attaches, underneath the suspension pickup points, and then you've got the secondary barge boards, the much larger ones with the Johnny Walker logo. Absolutely great turning vanes across the top here, these chimneys for the hot air to exit from the radiators. Look at how sharp they are. All that had to be modeled. Razor thin. Absolutely great. And I've got to say, looking at them from edge on, they are barely the width of a single pixel on my monitor. It's just incredible. And running at full resolution, just whoa. But anyway, moving rearward here, you can see the side of the side pod there, how very nicely it's been sculpted in this open curve on the outer edge there. Just space age stuff. The rear section, looking at the diffuser, very complicated. Looks like I'm counting 3 distinct layers to this diffuser. You got that outboard one, that upper center one, and then of course you've got this big tunnel coming out of the center where the starter hole would be and all that good stuff. Just ridiculous exploitation of aerodynamics. Great rear wing, you can see, very similar to the front wing in its profile, just kind of inverted. Not a flat section on this rear wing either, just great. Deep spoon section, very similar actually to what Mercedes have been running at a few points in 2016 and even 2015 at Spa. Remember, they gave us this deep dish spoon wing, and McLaren certainly running that in 2007, as you can see. A little detail on the car here, really the only external detail that we can interact with. Rain light, there it is. In its lit state, all the individual bulbs there, the lit sections, they line up very nicely with the unlit section, so very nice modding work there, and there's a little bit of a light bloom effect, as you can see as well. Very cool. This light does come on when you are in the pit lane. Moving back to the top side, you can see the engine cover here with that wonderful high gloss, highly reflective paint. A lot of people mocked McLaren for it. They said it kind of looked like the car visited the cosmetics department at Macy's, but absolutely wonderful. And again, you can see just how thin everything is. This is, I would say, a proto shark fin, the end of this engine cover here. It's just a totally flat section behind the shrink wrap of the bodywork. Look at how razor thin that is. Again, just a couple of pixels wide on my monitor. Unbelievable. Moving toward the cockpit there, the great modeling and detailing and texturing continues in the cockpit. We can actually go into the cockpit. Just fly in here over the top of the cockpit surround. And here we are. Quite a lot going on in here. This stuff below the cockpit surround, you don't really see it while you're out on track. But that steering wheel, absolutely wonderfully modeled. I do have to say the eye point in here is a little bit farther rear and a little bit higher than what it will be when we're out on a racetrack, but you can just get a sense of the proportions. Great visibility all around. You got great mirrors, and there's really not too much to obstruct your view of the track. Very nice. Of course, in these cars, you sit pretty low in them, and you're just sort of looking across the top of the chassis, but very easy to pick up your braking points, your apices, and all that kind of stuff. So great from a driving perspective. No real visibility problems whatsoever. Looking around the sides of the cockpit, that great modeling continues throughout. Again, the cockpit surround also very highly reflective, as is the external bodywork. Looking at the rear section here, the cockpit surround, you can just see that cushion panel to keep the driver's helmet from bouncing around too much on the back of the car. And then the snorkel up top. Weave of the carbon fiber visible inside the airbox. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. And if you look at the T-bar there on top of the snorkel and integrated roll hoop structure, you can see the lens for the onboard camera. That's the level of detail that these guys have aspired to achieve, and they have achieved it. I definitely agree. Along the other side here, very nice. See our shift lights there, they're all illuminated. Below that, you can see those 3 windows. That's for our LCD monitor. Just gives you basic speed, gear, and fuel information. Of course, everything's turned off now in showroom view, but you'll see that operating soon enough. And then that steering wheel, very nicely modeled. It looks good, and again, just it matches your inputs perfectly on your wheel as you're going around on track. Very nice visual. Absolutely marvelous. Step outside the cockpit one last time and just take one final look at the rest of this car. Again, 0.1 beta. 0.1 beta. I cannot believe it. That's the level of quality that we've got at 0.1. I cannot wait to see what these guys continue to do as they keep developing this car, because just I don't know if it can get any better, and it's only the beginning. Phenomenal. We're going to take this thing to Imola and just throw it around and give you guys a sense of what it's like to drive. I've got to say, it is one of the most immersive experiences that I have had in Assetto Corsa. It sounds right, it feels right, it goes right, it's got all of the right ingredients. So stand by for that. You do not want to miss it. Welcome to Imola. Before we go out on track, of course, we're going to have a look at the setup screens and show you what's what. These are all the default setup values. Over here in gears, we've got, of course, our gearbox. You can set up your gear ratios 1st through 7th plus final drive. And then on the tire screen, you've got your choice of tire compounds: super soft, soft, medium, and hard. Medium is the default setting there. You can also adjust your tire pressures between 8 and 12 psi. Very nice. Fuel, reasonably large fuel tank in this car, despite this being the era of refueling during races. Goes all the way up to 120 liters, as you can see there. So you can do some very long runs in this thing. Of course, take the extra weight into consideration. Electronics, traction control, default setting is 5, and of course the counterintuitive Assetto Corsa traction control, the larger the value, the less assist you have. So 1 is full assist and 6 is the minimum assist. Aero, there's a disparity in the values here in your wing settings. The default is 30 front and 12 rear. Although the front is measured in degrees between 0 and 30, the rear is just in a step value 0 to 12. Again, 30-12 is your default. Alignment, camber, and toe on all 4 corners, any way you like. Dampers, bound and rebound settings, the stiffness there, very, very nice. Drivetrain, this is your differential. So power, coast, and preload, you can adjust them in many different steps. Looks like 5% increments on the coast. Power and preload is in steps of 1. Very nice. Generic settings: brake bias, brake power, and steering assist. That is your power steering, basically. And then finally our suspension settings: front and rear, anti-roll bars, heave rates, travel ranges for the suspension, ride heights, and wheel rates on all 4 corners. Absolutely wonderful stuff. You can play for hours just on the setup screen. Because I've done quite a bit of running already at Imola in this car, I've got my own setup that I'm going to load up. And we're just going to add a little bit more fuel. And 65, 66 should be good enough. So, in the cockpit here, in the live MP4 22, you can see the shift lights are flashing white. That indicates that the pit lane speed limit is in force and that your rain light / pit light at the back is merrily flashing away. So, pedals in the lower left as always, and off we go. Just a quick trip up and down through the box, just to ensure that everything is working as it should. And we'll just concentrate on building some tire and brake temperature on this outlap. Tire warmers do a very good job, but they just need that little bit of extra help to get everything in the sweet spot. There's a full 19,000 RPM from the engine. Sounding absolutely great as it gets there. Love that gurgle on the upshift. The MP421 and MP422 had a very distinctive engine note, and VRC have definitely done a great job replicating that for us here. Sounds just like the real thing, pretty much. Big braking zone here. I'll say the brakes are up to temperature now. All right. Down the start-finish straight for our first flying lap. Seventh gear. Hitting 190 miles an hour by the time we get into the braking zone. And brakes on. Big stop for Tamburello. Feathering the throttle a little bit. Don't want to pick up too much traction control as we go through the second element of the chicane. Hard over the curbs and hard on the power. Car is already there for you on your first flying lap. Great, great stuff. So much stability in this thing. The engine delivery of its power, it's so responsive and tractable. And believe it or not, there's actually a fair amount of mid-end torque. So midway through the rev range, you've got plenty of torque, which really helps you here, coming out of Acqua Minerale going up the hill. See that gearbox there, it is so quick. Changing down from 7th to 2nd there, as quick as you like, as fast as you can pull the paddle, that's as quickly as the gears are going to come in. There's no rear locking, even under heavy braking associated with downshifts. Wonderful gearbox. Absolutely seamless up and down, no problems at all. Piratella. So much grip. There is so much performance in this car straight away. It's very difficult to believe. Now that everything's up to temperature and we can speak in a representative fashion about how the car feels once it is ready to go, let's start doing that, shall we? Well, as I completely mess up the exit of Variante Alta, I can say that the car is extremely precise and extremely stable. It is absolutely planted to the track surface in pretty much all running conditions. It's very positive on the front end. You get great bite on initial turn-in, and then that grip continues most of the way through the corner until you're ready to start really getting back on the power for the exit and track out. It's so stable, it's so predictable, and again, it rewards precision. You got to make sure that you really hit your turn-in points as precisely as you can, because the car just wants to give you all it's got all the time. Coming out of Tosa here, flat on the throttle straight away, no issue. Traction control in this car, yes, Formula 1 ran traction control in 2007. It was the last year when traction control was formally allowed. You could argue whether or not some teams have achieved a traction control effect in more recent years, but official traction control banned at the end of 2007. This car then, of course, designed to run traction control, and because of that, it operates absolutely wonderfully. There is no wheel spin at all, even like right now, hard on the throttle out of a low-speed corner like that, no problem. No oversteer, no wheel spin, absolutely 100% commitment all the time. Talked about the engine power delivery before. It's very smooth, it's very powerful, it's actually a little bit torquey. Yeah, it's a V8, but these Formula 1 engines, because they rev so high, they tend not to generate that much torque in comparison to something with higher displacement, but revs in, shall we say, on the low side of 10,000 RPM. But this car, it's a little bit of an oddball in that sense. It's got plenty of mid-range torque, which really helps you on corner exit. I like it. I like it a lot. And that torque, of course, is managed wonderfully by that traction control. Talked about how stable the car is under braking. Certainly that is true, but the brakes themselves are also very, very good. Formula 1 cars, yeah, they're light and they got big brakes, so you expect them to stop quickly, as this car does, but they just feel so positive. I've got the ability to play with the braking power as I am applying pretty damn close to full brakes. It's wonderful, the ability that you have just to feel the brakes out and to modulate that pressure. Cadence braking is very important in a Formula 1 car because, of course, as you slow down, the downforce drops and it becomes easier to lock up a wheel. This car definitely plays right into your hands with that. Everything is very stable and very linear when the aero load starts to come off as your speed decreases. Very nicely done indeed. Mention how the car feels positive on the front end. You'll notice my steering in this car is a little bit calmer than it is in some others. I tend to juggle the steering around through the corners sometimes, just because the front tires aren't quite biting the way I want them to. This car, no such issue. It just bites and it grips hard all the way through until you're ready to get on the power. Absolutely wonderful. And as you're getting on the power, particularly in that big traction zone out of Tosa, you can be over those exit curbs all you want, no problem. Here you gotta watch out because you're kind of in that transitional zone between mechanical and aero grip, but through low speed corners, if you've got curbing on track out, absolutely you can use it. How hard you can go over the curbs there at Variante Alta. A lot of cars get very unstable through there, not this one. The car is very gentle on its tires as well, I have to say. These mediums will last us easily through this entire run. And it's not just because of the compound. The car just is genuinely very kind to its tires. It uses them very effectively, but not too harshly. Hear that nice reverberation effect as we go between the pit wall and the grandstand here. Just that sense of immersion, it comes in a little bit more strongly. So very direct and so very precise in so many ways. Look at that, about 80 meters before the corner. Stops, no problem at all. Apex curbs, pick up the exit curbs, grab a gear, pick up the apex again, pick up the exit. Awesome. It'll do that all day long, and it will not complain a bit. So stable. If I had to draw a comparison to another car, I'd say the fastest car in Assetto Corsa, fastest real-world car anyway, is the Ferrari F2004 by ASR, and that is a phenomenal machine as well. This feels even better from a chassis standpoint. And it's not because I think this car is of higher quality than ASR's work. I think it's simply because this car is from 2007, and the F2004 is obviously from 2004. Formula 1, the pace of development is just frenetic. It never stops. And, you know, 2004 to 2007 doesn't seem like that big of a gap, but in Formula 1, that is eons. And the aero philosophy, even though those two cars were designed to very similar regulations in many regards, it just moved on, it evolved. So from an aero standpoint, this car just has a few years on the F2004 and it pays dividends. The only way that I have to say that this car feels worse than the F2004, it's not really the car's fault, it's because Formula 1 changed their engine regulations. 2.4 liter V8 versus a 3 liter V10. 2 fewer cylinders, half a liter less displacement, about 200 horsepower less. However, on the question of ultimate lap time, I don't know. This car might be able to hold its own against the F2004. I might have to test that out. Running around here, we're doing low 122s, high 121s. Not really putting out that much concentrated effort, I must say. And we're on the medium tires. On low tanks, on super softs, I don't know what kind of lap time this thing might do here. It might squeeze into the 119s. And if it does, well, that's F2004 territory. Gotta say though, the sense of immersion I get is nearing unparalleled, I've gotta say. Just the way the sounds and the visuals are coming together, and then you couple that with the great chassis dynamics and the ability that this car just gives you straight away to attack the racetrack through every single corner. You really just start to sink into this, and you go into a corner, you get on the brakes, the car's there for you. It just gives you so much confidence straight away just to get on with the program and just keep going that little bit more on every lap. It can really start to turn into an obsessive kind of experience here. The car just sort of gets into your mind, and you start to treat it more as an extension of your arms and your eyes. It doesn't feel so much as something that you're driving, but something that you're almost conducting. It's a kind of a visceral experience that becomes more instinctive rather than deliberate. The gearbox is just so fast and so intuitive. Your fingers just flick away on the back of your steering wheel, pulling gears. You just let your ears and your eyes dictate your shift points. Got the shift lights right on top of the dash there. You're not really looking at them while you're out on track, but they're right toward the edge of your peripheral vision so you can see them easily. Just look for the blue lights and pull the lever. Also gotta say, and you'll hear them better when we have our hot laps at the end of the video, but the sounds. These are awesome sounds, and again, they sound just about identical to how this car sounded on TV, particularly from those onboard shots. They're just what they need to be. I have to say, sounds in sim racing, in addition to the graphics, in addition to the physics, I think sounds have become a little bit of an unsung hero in sim racing, because you can have a car with great physics, with great modeling, great textures, but if it doesn't sound right, it just takes away from the overall experience. And so many mods now have such great sounds, and it just adds that little something extra to the experience of driving a car around. Sounds have become very important indeed, and they've only gotten better. I remember the days of R-Factor when you get a third-party mod out, and they were very good for their day, but nowadays, that just wouldn't cut it anymore. This does. Big time. Bit of oversteer there. The rear tire's starting to go off a little bit despite the traction control. This car does have a little bit of a tendency to give you unexpected snap oversteer at times. I'm not quite sure why. It's only happened to me a handful of times, not enough for me to really start to notice any trends, but could be that you get on the power a little bit too soon. It could just be weight transfer through a corner, but sometimes it does catch you out with some very big snap oversteer, and you've got to be really quick to catch it despite the traction control helping you out. You do catch it, the car returns very quickly to its happy neutral state, but you don't, you're going to be finding yourself having a hot date with the hedge in a hurry. Love those low rev sounds as the traction control's gurgling away, cutting the spark, controlling the wheel spin out of the low speed corners and the traction zones. The trill on the upshift that you get. Again, very true to life. Those downshifts also sound very nice indeed. I have any criticisms of this car, I can't think of them right now. If they exist, I can't think of anything wrong with it. It drives right, it looks right, it sounds right, it does everything you would expect it to do. If you had good renderings of all of the tracks from the 2007 Formula 1 season, you could very convincingly go out and create a whole video series of the 2007 pole laps recreated here in Assetto Corsa with this car. McLaren pole laps anyway. It's just everything. And it's only in 0.1. I mean, if this car were a 1.0, I would say, bravo, guys. But it's 0.1. What else is there to improve? I don't know. Stop a little long of our pit box here. And there you have it, VRC's McLaren MP4 22. I don't have any words to say other than this is it. This is the new gold standard, or perhaps I should say silver standard, of third-party modding in Assetto Corsa. Maybe it's missing a few details like removable bodywork in showroom view, but just look at this. 1.1 beta. 0.1 beta. This is the babiest of baby releases as far as mod development goes, and just look at what you've got. I mean, you've got all the shut lines for all the different body panels, nicely rendered. The exhaust there. Just the diffuser, the rain light there. Just everything is here, and it's all done very nicely. I can't think of too much to improve. The way it sounds is phenomenal. The way it handles is phenomenal. And again, as I said in the very beginning of this piece, the way it looks. Just the way it looks. It's so highly polished, pun intended. But to be a 0.1 beta, I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. This seems finished. This seems like a complete package, but it's not. I have no idea what's coming next, but this is already blowing my mind, so I don't know if I can handle any improvements to this thing. It just, wow. But, of course, to end this piece, we've got to see what it does when I'm not talking to you, when we're on light tanks and super sticky tires, stickiest we can make them at least, and we'll show you lap times and what it can do. But hopefully you've enjoyed this piece. I've certainly enjoyed making it. VRC, I just gotta say again, thank you so very much for the work that you're doing. This car was very much a surprise. I certainly didn't expect to get it as soon as we did, but it's just a phenomenal piece of modding craftsmanship, and I can't wait to see what you guys do next. For you, my beloved audience, however, stay tuned for some hot laps, because we're definitely going to have a look at what this thing does on some sticky tires and barely running on fumes, so weight's as low as possible, and we'll show you what it does then. So stay tuned for the hot laps. For RMan 601 saying thank you all very, very much for watching, and we'll see you soon.